In the Duke basketball world, we've been talking about the number 6 since 2015. Duke is looking for that sixth national championship. They've got their sights on six. And our guest today, Isaac Trotter, says this Duke team has six recipes. What in the world does that mean? Let's find out on today's show.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson, proudly serving as your host of this show. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch the show on YouTube each and every day. Hit that subscribe button to watch our channel, to watch our show. Follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils. I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. On today's show, our guest Isaac Trotter from 247 Sports, one of my absolute favorites in the college basketball community, has written earlier in the week about 6 different recipes for the Duke basketball team. What does that mean? We'll dive into that on today's show and so much more. Also, please make sure that you check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel that we've now got. Locked On Sports here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever National Sports 247 streaming channel. All right, let's get going. Let's move forward. We open up today's show, and joining us now is my good friend, the aforementioned Isaac Trotter, who's with us. He was in the building a little bit earlier this week when Duke played in the Champions Classic. We were joking earlier this week on the program that it never feels like Duke plays the first game of the night. It always feels like on the East Coast, we're the ones having to stay up for that 9 p.m. Eastern tip. And yet it was Duke who got things going against Michigan State early. Thanks for the time. It's good to see you, Isaac.
Yeah, good to see you. It was fun to be in the building. You know, the United Center, like you start to feel like it's basketball season when the Champions Classic rolls around. There's a lot of NBA people there. There's Clutch was there. Zach LaVine was there the day after he asked for a trade. So there's a lot of people in the building, and it's starting to feel like, you know, the lights start to shine bright a little bit. And, you know, I don't want to overreact to one game in early November, but that game definitely means something for Duke. And so it means something for everybody. And so to see the way the Duke found a way to grind one out in the second half, I think you're starting to feel pretty good about this team, because, you know, there'd have been some real consternation if they're 1-2 with 2 losses to Michigan State and Arizona, and we avoid that dreadful scenario.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm thrilled about that. A 1-2 Duke team is a team that I'm not used to. I don't know what that looks like in my lifetime, certainly, and in many Duke fans' lifetime. When you go 40-plus years with Mike Krzyzewski and what Shire has done early, 1-2 is not what we're as familiar with. 6 different recipes, 6 different ways to win. We'll kind of dive into that a little bit in just a moment. I do want to mention, though, Arizona, because Duke does have a blemish so far on their record. You're someone who wants to be as prepared as possible, Isaac, when you're going into a venue to see a team. And the last time we saw Duke take the floor was last Friday night when Arizona came to town. Really fun non-conference matchup. What'd you take away from that game? What did you see from that Duke team in particular?
Yeah, it's one game. You don't want to overreact to it. I thought that maybe Duke's inability to protect the rim was something that scared me a little bit. I think, let me pull up the stat really quick. I thought that Arizona had a bunch of success at the rim. Yeah, 15 for 32 on layups and 4 for 4 on dunks. So what is that? 38 points right there, right at the front of the rim. That's not going to be a winning strategy for Duke long term. And so I think that this is a really good early test. I mean, Arizona is one of the best teams in the country. They have one of the best low post presence in the country. Umar Ballo is right up there as one of the best big men in the country. So you're starting to see, a lot of teams throughout the game, they don't play anybody early. So we don't really know what their issues are. And Duke is very different in that, they're more than fine playing great opponents early. They're fine getting exposed early on what they need to work on. And I think it'll help them in the long run. So that was a game that was nip and tuck. It went right back and forth. I mean, that game was, Duke had the lead with a minute to go. You expect them to find a way to potentially win that game at home, but they didn't, and that's okay. It's one of those things where I feel like now John Shire has a proof of concept of like, hey, if we want to reach our peak ceiling, we have to protect the rim. And I go back to the portal. I look at some of the misses that they had looking for a big man like Ernest Uday could have really potentially helped. But that's how this roster is built. And now you have to kind of win with offense, and you have to win a different way, and you have to win with perimeter defense and not letting those straight line drives, not letting them getting to the paint in the beginning. And I think that Duke is going to be better for it in the long run. And that was a game they still won. You know what I mean? Like they were right there. I'm not going to be too concerned about a team long term for a game like that.
Yeah, just the second game of the season. Unfortunately for Duke fans, it does end with the image in your head once again of Caleb Love waving farewell to the Cameron Crazies once again and publicly declares once and for all that he is, in fact, a Tar Heel for life and kind of gets the final laugh. So that part of it, not the greatest, but you're right. To your point, it's just the second game of the year. We did not learn that Duke can't win a national title after a game like that against Arizona.
No doubt. And I think that Duke would love to get another chance to see Caleb Love. And Caleb Love did a whole lot of talking for a guy who didn't really do that much. True. So that's one thing that I'm like, kind of got to pick your battles a little bit. I mean, what was he? 3 for 10 from the field, 6 turnovers, like whatever, man, like do your thing. So we'll see how this goes. I still think long term though, like that Arizona backcourt is nasty. And I thought Duke's backcourt rose to the occasion a little bit, and I think they can be better, and they will be better. That Arizona team, I think, is really connected. Their pieces fit together super well, and so for Duke to be in that position in game one, I still feel really good about what they are in that first major test this year. And I think we saw some of those learning lessons against Michigan State in game 3 of the season, their second real test.
No doubt. We saw in the backcourt for that Duke team. We know what to expect out of Tyrese Proctor and Jeremy Roach. They've been there before on that stage. Against Arizona, we saw Jared McCain be kind of a playmaker for Duke down the stretch. We saw Caleb Foster do absolutely nothing in 13 minutes of action, only has a foul to his name when you look at the stats. That was not the case earlier in the week when Duke took on at Michigan State. Let's talk a little bit more about what we saw in that game and what's to come for this Duke team. And we'll do that after our first time out here on today's show of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks, of course, is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. The easiest and by far most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and start to watch all of those rollings come in. Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second due to injury, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only DFS platform with an injury insurance policy. Taking a look and testing my skills on Prize Picks this season is the most exciting way to play. If you have the skills, you could turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Right now, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is a proud sponsor of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. All right, let's keep it moving. We're going to move forward on today's show here with Isaac Trotter from 247 Sports. I'm JJ Jackson. Plug your work. Before we get any deeper, college basketball season is here. You've got content galore, I'm sure. Tell us what's coming, what to expect throughout the year. What all do we need to know, Isaac?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Isaac__Trotter. Got to do the double underscores because someone else stole mine. And then, a lot this week. Some of the staples that we have all season long is 10 takes column that I usually do once a week, which is pretty, sometimes nerdy, sometimes not so nerdy. Got some film in there of kind of what you see. And I'm kind of been chasing a lot more features lately too. So a recent feature I did on Dalton Connect, the kid out of Tennessee, one of the best players in the portal, really cool story, paid his own way from JUCO and he's worked his way up into the SEC. So be on the lookout for that. Hopefully we can get some Duke features coming up soon as well. So that's kind of some of the stuff you can do, and you can follow me on Twitter for 247sports.com too. You can get my work there.
I love it. Go check it all out. And all right, so let's talk about this Duke team. Let's talk about what we saw against Michigan State. Looking back again at that Arizona game, it was not a good start for Duke in that first half. They shoot 2 for 12 from three-point range. They're 6 of 11 in the second half. Arizona doubled Duke on the glass, 29-15 in the first half, and Duke won the rebounding battle in the second half. I set it up to say in a premier game against Michigan State, the offense was slow out of the gates for both of these teams, but it was a game in which this young Duke team didn't have to find themselves fighting and clawing back into a game. They were kind of the team that was setting the tone in this one.
They were, and I thought Michigan State was super desperate, and I think you saw that on the defensive end of the floor. I thought Michigan State's defensive effort was pretty good. And we still have some concerns about what this Duke offense will evolve and change into, but we started to see a little bit of it in the second half. And, Caleb Foster hitting those 4 threes was huge. That pull-up jumper he hit from 17 was nice. I think he had 16 of his 18 points in the second half. And, Flip, his ability to, Michigan State is physical. Like, they're one of the most physical teams in the country. They want to make this like a boxing match. And they were super, super physical with him. And I thought Flip really responded to the challenge. He created a lot of really good looks. I think he only had 3 assists. But if you go back and look at the tape, I thought he had like 7 potential assists. I have to go back and double check that. It was good stuff. Some of the creation stuff that he was good. And I thought he made the play of the game too, finding Foster for that huge 3 with just over a minute to go as well. So you start to see like Flip, assert himself as I'm the true alpha of this team, but you do it without really scoring. That's the fun part of this, where this Duke team could have a very, very high ceiling, because everything's going to revolve around him. And when he's a willing passer, willing creator for other shots, this Duke team can really, really hurt you.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for is creators to give the playmakers opportunities to go and knock down a shot. Somebody like Caleb Foster, who could set others up in his own right. I think of a player like Tyrese Proctor, who shooting off to a slower start, but did not turn the basketball over at all for Duke. And we mentioned the sloppy first half. There were a lot of turnovers early in the game. Tyrese Proctor was not one of those guys, kind of the table setter for Duke.
Yeah, no doubt. And, I think Proctor, the conversation around Proctor has been very interesting, right? Like I did our top 100 players before the season, and I think I had him like top 10 or something. And it's a projection, right? Like, we're projecting that he makes this big jump. Like, he isn't he's not a top 10 proven player in the country, and that's okay. And so the jumper hasn't fallen and people are worried about it. And I felt like Tyrese was like completely under control in that game against Michigan State. 13, 6, and 6 with 2 steals and a block. Like that works all day, every day. Like his cutting was really nice. He had that one give and go with Ryan Young, which was really sweet. Dishes it into him, cuts backdoor the moment his defender turns his head, gets a layup. Like, he's nice. Like, and I feel like there's going to be just times where, like, people want Proctor to be like this 29-5 guy. And I'm not sure that's his game. And the beauty of Duke is that they don't need him to be like that. And so, I've talked about 6 recipes to win in March. The reason why you have that is because you got guys that want to pass the basketball. And like, Duke has an ability to, like, it can be someone else's night every single other night. And like, that's what I like about this team. Yes, it's around Flip. And yes, Flip is the one that's going to really carry this team all year long. But the different guys that can fill in as to be like those connectors, that the play finisher, right? If Tyrese or if Flip is the play starter, those guys can be play finishers. And I think Duke has a lot of different guys that can be play finishers. Ryan Young's a play finisher. Caleb Foster's a play finisher. Jared McCain's a play finisher. Mark Mitchell, it doesn't look the same, but it is when he's, creating advantages and getting downhill to the rim and getting the free throw line 9-10 times. So that's what part of this Duke team that I think is fun. And I'm interested to see how John Shire, taps that button moving forward and how that evolves with this group.
There it is. I teased it. You kind of gave people a little bit more there with your written work earlier in the week. Go check it out, 247 Sports. Things you learned from this Duke team. Those 6 recipes I kept referencing, just different ways for this Duke team to win. Given that it's the 3rd game of the season, that's got to be you look at what you want to be at the end of the year, and compared to probably years past with loads of freshmen on a Duke team when you don't really know what you're looking at, or hell, even last year when it is a first-year coach and you have nothing to kind of look at for Jon Scheyer. It's got to feel pretty good just looking at it all to know, okay, we kind of get an idea of what all this Duke team can be a long way down the road once we get to March.
No doubt. Proof of concept, right? Proof of concept. What are we and what can we look like? And, we get to March, you got to win 6 games, and sometimes it takes 6 different ways. And so we saw the Caleb Foster game. You know what a flip game looks like, right? We all know what a Jeremy Roach game looks like. That's a third. We know what Mark Mitchell can be in his moments. I love Jared McCain. Like, he didn't play well against Michigan State, only 16 minutes. I feel even better about him after that game, to be honest, even though he didn't play well. His energy on the bench, like, he's super locked in. Like, it just seems like he is here for the right reasons. And so those are the things that I go, even on a night where he doesn't have it, like, he's engaged, he's not pouting, he's not sulking on the bench. Like, that's a sign of a player that I think has a very, very high ceiling. We're going to see a Jared McCain game. And so that's the beauty of what I think that this Duke team can become. And, this Duke half court offense was not good, right? Like, they weren't good yet. And that's fine, because there's just so much more time to evolve and grow. And, I'm interested how this rotation shakes out. I'm interested to see if Sean Stewart can start to gain a little bit more. Like, how many minutes is Ryan Young versus Sean Stewart? It was 24 for Young and 4 for Stewart, I believe, against Michigan State. What does that gap look like in a couple months? Is it maybe 18 and 10? Like, so how does that look, and how does that evolve? But it's pretty clear that this backcourt for Duke, you got 4 guys back there that I think could lead your team in scoring on any given night. That's a luxury that few teams in the country possess.
Good to see the Caleb Foster game already. To your point, Filipowski, 25 points, 15 against Michigan State, did a little bit of everything. He's scoring from the outside. I know he didn't make a shot from 3-point range against Michigan State, but had some good looks against Arizona, going 3 from 5 from the outside, and his post touch just continues to get better. We talk about new hip flip, 2-hip flip. He's got all the fun things out there. But just back to Filipowski in particular, again, you kind of mentioned your top players going into the season. Everyone has got to be in love with what Filipowski can be this year, given what he was last year and what we've already seen through 120 minutes of basketball played for this Duke team.
Yeah, he's fabulous. He's fabulous. He's one of the best players in the country. I think he's the favorite to win ACC Player of the Year. I think he's a first-team All-American type guy, and the impact that he has on this team on the defensive end, I think, is really interesting too. That's one thing I felt like against Michigan State. Duke's process defensively was really sound. I thought they did a really good job of understanding the scouting report. Jon Scheyer talked about in the post-game press conference. He's like, Michigan State hasn't hit a 3 in the first few games, and when you're playing them, it's like, man, like, that's kind of scary. Like, are they going to get hot? It's like, what's going to happen here? And I still thought that they were very locked in on the scouting report. They did a very good job of taking away A.J. Hoggard's driving lanes. They took away Jaden Akins' transition at all. I thought they did a great job against Michigan State's bigs, not letting them get any easy buckets. And those bigs are not very talented. Part of that is on Flip. And, Flip took the challenge of going up against Malik Hall in that second half as well. And Malik Hall was a bucket early in the game. And I thought Malik Hall made some tough shots. But the type of looks that Flip was forcing him to take, I was really encouraged by. So I leave that game being like, Flip just feels like he's in a really good place mentally and a really good place physically. And when you're seeing that on both ends of the floor, like, yeah, you didn't want him to not foul as much. Yeah, sometimes the decision-making needs to be better, but his energy on the glass, his ability to get to the free throw line, the threes, they'll fall some games, they fall not. Other games they won't. And I feel like that's just the Flip experience. I'm not expecting him to be this 45% three-point shooter all of a sudden. That's just not who he is. But there's just so much of his game that's so good. And I think he takes, he's a little bit like Hunter Dickinson for Kansas, where he just takes so much attention from everybody else that, like, Tyrese can kind of flow through the game and let the game come to him. Jeremy Roach doesn't have to press the envelope. Mark Mitchell can, Mark Mitchell is going to see some really advantageous matchups all year long, because they're going to get really creative guarding Flip. And Arizona showcased that a little bit too. They started out with Umar Ballo guarding him. Then they changed that to Keshad Johnson is guarding him, and Umar Ballo's on Mark Mitchell. And like, Duke was kind of like discombobulated a little bit. That's going to come in March. That's going to come in the regular season in ACC play. That's going to come in the ACC tournament. Like, teams are going to try those things. And so Duke's starting to finesse that a little bit early and see, how do we handle that? How do we use Mark Mitchell as a screener? How do we use him in a way to get downhill? All of that is because Flip's awesome. And like, teams have to like guard them in different ways. And so I feel like he just makes everybody's job description so much more well-defined for Duke. And that's the fun part about what his game is. And I think he's going to have a huge, huge year. He's already had a great start, but he's going to have a really, really big year, I think.
Yeah, just health-wise in a much better place. And who knows what in the world that feels like to go through a double hip procedure. And he's feeling the best he's ever felt in college and in a good number of years. We're very much so dunk track people here at Locked On Blue Devils. Filipowski had 19 all of last year, Isaac. He's already got 5 through the first 3 games this year. And I know it's something small for a 7-foot guy who is going to get some looks at the rim. But still, that's an act. That's an effort to get up there and play above the rim a little bit. And just imagine if we get some more of those and the growls that you could get from Filipowski after the fact, which is awesome.
Well, I think it's explosiveness too. And it's like, I think functional athleticism can play on both ends of the floor as well. You know, the rim protection is the thing that I keep looking at. I think he has to step up. He's the best rim protector in that starting 5, especially when you're playing him at the 5. And we both know that's not Ryan Young's game, and that's fine. He's more of a get in the way, get big, be right positionally guy than he is, I'm going to put my chin on the rim and go block a shot at the top of the square. And that's fine. And so I think that functional athleticism that we see from Flip, can they use that? I think that's going to be showcased a ton on the defensive end, both as a rim protector, but also on the perimeter, whether you're switching ball screens, whether you're hard hedging them. I think you can guard ball screens a lot of different ways when he's feeling like this. And that's a huge sign for his development. And, Flip is going to be super consistent all year long. But if he can avoid that injury bug and avoid like some of those like iffy issues with his hips, and he's functionally a different athlete, I just feel like that just raises the ceiling for this team overall and for him personally too.
All right, let's take one more time out here on the show. Then we'll talk a little bit more about what's to come for Duke over these next couple of weeks. We've seen 2 games already against premier opponents for the Blue Devils. Still have Arkansas and Baylor looming, but a number of different games to kind of touch on. And we'll do that after our final timeout here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils today is brought to you by our friends at Athletic Brewing. They have completely changed the game when it comes to non-alcoholic beers. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good, that are full of flavor and well-crafted, just like a full-strength beer. Their brews are great tasting and award-winning and beat out full-strength beers in global competitions. Brewing over 50 styles of craft, non-alcoholic beer, including IPAs, golden sours, and more. Constantly releasing limited edition experimental styles to add to their variety. Fit for all times, so you can drink them anytime, anywhere, and make any activity even more enjoyable. And the best part, there are no hangovers, ever. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers, use code LOCKEDON at checkout to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. All right, our final few moments here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils alongside Isaac Trotter. I'm JJ Jackson. All right, the Duke team getting set for a couple of games coming up. They've got Bucknell tonight, LaSalle, Southern Indiana, and then they've got the big game at Arkansas in the non-conference, the ACC-SEC Challenge, followed by their first conference game at Georgia Tech, 1st of December. So the last few years in college athletics, we're adding new acronyms to our vernacular. We've got name, image, and likeness, NIL. We've seen the NLIs come in with Cooper Flag, those letters of intent. And now we've got these MTEs. We've got multi-team events that take place, and Duke's got one coming up here. So, Isaac, a couple of games into the season, we mentioned the depth of this team, some younger players on this Duke roster in particular. I'd imagine that's kind of the focal point for this next stretch for Duke.
Totally. Yeah, I think you kind of want to see Sean Stewart get a little bit more run. You kind of want to see, what does Jalen Blake's role look like? Can Christian Reeves working his way into the rotation? What else does that work like? But to be honest, let's be honest. Like, you're playing Bucknell, LaSalle, and Southern Indiana. We're not going to learn anything about this team. nothing in those 3 games, right? Like that's just the truth. That we're not going to learn anything. But that Arkansas game in late November is going to be so much fun. I would pay a lot of money to get to go to that game. That would be that game. That place is going to be absolutely popping. And Arkansas is such an interesting matchup because Duke's backcourt honestly has a lot of youth in it, and Arkansas is old and athletic and bouncy, and there's going to be NBA dudes all over the floor in that game. So I can't wait for that one. And don't sleep on that Georgia Tech game, because Georgia Tech is a new team under a first-year coach, Damon Stoudemire, but there is talent there. And I understand that they lost to UMass Lowell yesterday or Tuesday, and that's not a good look, but there is still talent on that roster. Miles Kelly is a really, really good player. Kawasi Reeves, the transfer out of Florida, has been up and down throughout his career, but on certain nights he can be electric. And Amari Abram out of Ole Miss. So they have a lot of really young talent. It's new talent. That team's going to be really interesting to watch. I don't know if they're going to be ready now. They're obviously not, but give them a couple months, and I could see that as a roster that could come, to give teams a little bit of a trouble. So, you're going on the road, sleepy Georgia Tech road game to start ACC play on December 2nd after you played Arkansas. Like that, you better be ready, because that Georgia Tech team is talented enough to give Duke a real run for its money for 40 minutes.
Yeah, not to mention, if you're watching us on YouTube, we're throwing the schedule across the bottom of your screen. It's weird. We've done it the last few years when you've got 20 conference games now. You play one ACC game, and then everybody takes like a month break, and you play 4 or 5 more games in that mix. And one of those games for Duke is going to be Baylor at MSG, another kind of Power 5, Big 6 school in basketball. What can Duke expect in that matchup, you think, up in the Garden, a neutral site game?
Yeah, so Baylor for me was a team I didn't necessarily love in the preseason. We didn't have them ranked. That was different from other people. And then they come out and they've beaten Auburn. They played okay early. The kid that's really surprised me, I shouldn't be surprised, but Jacoby Walter is 100% fully legit. The 5-star freshman is awesome. And then Eves Missy, the other freshman, has been very, very good as well. Just an athletic freak. He had a couple plays against Auburn that, he blocked a shot at the rim, got a steal, dunk, and won on Janai Broom, Auburn star big man, who you know all about, right? Yeah. And so that was a pretty interesting sequence. You're like, man, this kid doesn't look like a freshman. But Baylor's tough. They have Ray J. Dennis, a big-time transfer out of Toledo. He's been iffy so far to start. His numbers look okay, but the shooting has been iffy, and the turnovers are still a concern as he kind of adjusts to high major basketball. But Jaden Nunn out of VCU has been really good for them. Jalen Bridges kind of always leaves you wanting a little bit more sometimes. That's just kind of the player he is, but he's still talented. So I think you go into that game going like, hey, like this is going to be a track meet. Like Baylor can really, really score. They're young. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to give you free points in transition sometimes, but they'll get it up and down. And I think that they are a little bit bigger this year, especially on the back end. They're bigger on the back end, but even in the guards too, they're a little bit bigger. So I wouldn't expect them to be horrific defensively, but I still think that Duke can kind of get what you want against them. The one thing that they don't have is like that long stretch 4-ish type of wing or big forward that can guard Flip. They don't really have that guy. So I think they're going to probably double team Flip a lot in that game and try to make him make mistakes. And if he's sound with his decision making, I think you can get really good looks against them.
Going to be a lot of fun. Got a lot of Duke basketball to watch over the next few weeks before we really get into ACC play at the turn of the year and that sort of thing. So just excited to see all this come together. Excited to see the Duke team in action. And always, as we've seen the early signing period open up, we've had great visits with you about Jon Scheyer's efforts on the recruiting trail. Since we last spoke, Isaac, we have pledged allegiance to the flag. We've captured the flag. We're saluting the flag. We're doing it all. 5 players turning in a letter of intent for Duke. The class coming together pretty strong once again for Jon Scheyer out there on the recruiting trail.
I, for one, am stunned, right? We talked about this for months that I thought Duke was the favorite for Cooper Flagg from the beginning. When I did that really cool feature story on him, like just his rise, it was like a lot of Duke love. It was pretty easy that Duke was a team that they really liked. So it's good to see that pen to paper there. And let's get this party started, right? Like, I'm going to enjoy this year. This year is going to be really, really fun. But man, it's like, you talk about dynasties, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse here, but if Duke plays well this year, and then you get Flag coming in next year, like it's the start of a run of a nice little heater here for Jon Scheyer. Not a bad way to start your career if you're Jon Scheyer, to have a team like this who was ranked preseason number 1 or number 2 in the country, and then Cooper Flag the following year. That's pretty fun. He's living the good life right now, and I think that this year's big, right? Like you got to win, and you have to play at a high level, and sometimes I felt like Duke was kind of set up to fail a little bit because the expectations are so high. It's like if you don't make the Final Four, if you don't win the ACC, it's like, well, you kind of messed up this year. And so at some point, like if they live up to the hype a little bit and kind of do what we expect them to do, you could talk about this next couple of years being super, super fun for Duke, because I think Cooper Flag's going to come in and just be a rock star right away. I mean, some of the stuff he's doing right now his senior year, holy crap. Like he is an awesome player. And I cannot wait to see him in a Blue Devils uniform and see what he does. That's going to be one of the biggest stories of college basketball, in a year from now.
Well, we're for sure going to be tuned into all of that and all of your coverage in the days and weeks to come. Isaac, this will not be your first and only visit in this new basketball season. Excited to many more chats down the line. Thank you again for taking the time to join us on the show today.
Anytime, man.
All right. That's Isaac Trotter joining us here on Locked On Blue Devils. And that does it for our show here today. Thank you so much for your support. Again, make sure you go check out Locked On Sports today. We've launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. So go make sure you check it out and subscribe to that channel as well. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.